Welcome back to Detections Podcast with your hosts, Exiled and
Understudy 77.
So, I'm back from Mexico.
You're back from Mexico. I thought you were back from Mexico weeks ago. Man, this stuff gets confusing.
Yeah, the whole Doctor Who thing, I'm just going to I still haven't seen enough stuff on it, but yeah, this whole time travel time stuff is confusing. But now that we're recording, I'm actually back from Mexico recording.
Okay, it'll make more sense when you finally go watch Doctor
Who. So you want to hear an interesting thing that happened at the start of my trip?
Well, does this have to do with why you have time to watch Doctor Who?
Yeah, it has absolutely everything to do with why I now have time to watch Doctor Who.
All right, let's talk about that. And watch Doctor Who.
So I'm there. I'm flying to Mexico up in the air from Denver, Colorado. And when I land, I receive some text messages from the HR group of the company that I had been working at. And due to going through immigration and just the whole landing procedure and getting my bags, I wasn't able to have a phone call with them, and they, no cause, laid me off, terminated me. I don't know what the actual term is to use.
Damn.
While I was on vacation.
Damn. Cold-blooded.
Right. Ice cold. Yeah, so that was an interesting start to the vacation, but it ended up being fantastic though.
Before that, I just want to point one thing out and what this really means for everybody who's listening. The man that I do this with is employable and looking for work.
Yes.
Scoop him up now.
Definitely.
And then you can get the inside scoop on everything we're going to talk about.
Maybe, because sometimes we don't even know what we're talking about until we do our pregame.
That's true, like today. But also, he's way smarter than I am. If I'm the semi-charismatic one, which is a stretch, to be honest, you're the smart one. So, employ him, because he's the smart one.
But yeah, so even though that was kind of an angry, shitty thing to deal with at the beginning of the vacation, I determined to not let it impact and just enjoyed my week there. And the couple that got married, my friends that got married, it was a fantastic week. Everyone was super happy. I did burn the shit out of my back, though.
I believe that. You know who didn't enjoy your week there?
Mycroft.
Yeah. Damn, you got me.
Yep.
Yes.
He did enjoy it when I got back. It was about a solid 2.5 days of him not leaving my side and sleeping next to me the entire time.
I totally believe that. Entirely believe that. But I am glad you're back, because it was difficult without you. And I had to go record by myself, and that was, while it was fun, it's not the same.
And I really wanted to be there for that recording too, because it was a special guest that I really wanted to chat with.
Well, we're going to make sure that you chat with him, but we're not going to tell anybody who it is yet. You have to listen to the whole episode or skip to the end, and then we might give you a sneak peek. One of those may happen.
But it was interesting timing, because I know we had penciled in to have me available, but the bride's
drunk.
father was like, I want to take all of everyone who's left, which was the married couple, myself, the bride's parents, and her brother, into the shopping part of Playa del Carmen, and took us out to dinner and made sure we had plenty of alcohol too. So I was like, nope, we're eating food and getting drunk in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said, sorry, Exiled can't be with us. He's drunk. Although that would have been really fun.
Yeah. And we were taking shots of Don Julio 1800 too.
Oh, that would have been really fun to have you here drunk with one of your heroes. That would have been kind of hilarious.
I have a feeling he would have laughed about it a lot too.
Probably. I am, however, glad it was a good trip. Shitty things happen, but you kind of had the perfect distraction for it.
Oh yeah,
there up front.
All-inclusive black band at a resort. Yes, please.
Yeah, and I mean that goes a long way into kind of the coping process a little bit. But some cool things happen too, right? Like in about a month, give or take, in April, the Dream Team will be together in person again for the first time since Derby.
And there'll be some of our family from Dead Pixel Sec there too.
There will. And we might even do like a special edition episode. We have both been asked to speak at B-Sides Charm, and we will both I shouldn't say asked to. We were both accepted to speak at B-Sides Charm because, like, you know, we fill out CFPs and we go through that process, and like nobody actually asks us to speak. Like, I've been asked to speak once. It was not something that happens very often, and that's okay. I don't mind the process, but we will both be speaking at B-Sides Charm, and I believe both on like sock-based topics.
Yes. Yes, it is both sock-based topics.
So what are you talking about?
So I'm going to try my hand at more of an entry-level sock-based talk and break down the sock investigation.
Ooh. I'm going way more high level. I'm actually talking about how not to make sock puppets.
Hey, didn't we have an episode about that recently
sock
too?
Puppets. Yeah. Although we named that prior to, like, I had already submitted the paper titled How Not to Make a Sock Puppet. Mm-hmm. So like it came from there first. But I'm really excited. Like this is the talk I really want to give this year. Because it basically breaks down a whole bunch of different strategies and methodologies that you can use to like make the sock not a place that kills people's dreams. And I'm very excited to give that talk, and I'm very excited that you're going to be there for this, and like a whole bunch of people are going to be there, and it's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, we'll get to see Blind Hacker again in person.
I see him all the time. I don't need to see him.
You're lucky that way.
I don't know if I'd call it luck, but
I have about a 5,000-mile commute in order to see that happen.
Well, hey, as someone who's currently highly employable, you could change that.
I have been kind of looking around the Colorado area because I don't think I can give up my mountains. Like,
you gotta look at this area.
But you don't have my mountains or my trees.
We got the Appalachian. The Shenandoah Valley is gorgeous, man. We got mountains and trees all over Virginia. Just gotta go a little ways for them, but it's freaking gorgeous.
I may have to take a trip out there and see, check it out, see how it feels.
Yeah, you should. It's freaking awesome. I mean, it's a little ways out. Like, I'm in a more populated area, but I mean, less than an hour, and like you're literally in the Shenandoah Valley, and it's amazing and awesome. And personally, I much prefer the Appalachian Mountains because they're older and better.
I like the younger mountains of the Cascades, and the chance to know, if one of them's gonna erupt because they're predominantly volcanoes.
Yeah, I don't really want to live there. Like volcano. Like I don't want to live where something can erupt. No, the old mountains get really interesting, and this is a really fucking weird tangent. But the old mountains get really interesting because, like, they're everywhere. Like, it just completely covers the landscape. Like, it's not like Colorado is weird to me because it's flat with, like, mountains in the distance. Where, like, where I'm from, like, it's just mountains. Everything is mountains. Like, you're in them. You can't get away from them.
Yeah. I've made some of my friends a little irritated at me in Colorado when I took a road trip and drove through Kansas on my way to Moab. So you cut through Colorado to go to Arches. And I said, Kansas ends and Colorado begins at the Rockies. Because it is so flat until you actually start to make that climb up. But once you're like through the Eisenhower Tunnel and you're like in Vail, Aspen, Eagle, it is absolutely beautiful on that side.
I'm really hoping that when you write the description for this episode, it starts with "This week on Detections, we talk about geography, specifically large hills."
Yep, and how to detect the difference between a deciduous and a coniferous tree.
Ooh, yeah. Although we didn't actually cover that, so that would be kind of mean if we told them that we did. We have a crap ton of news tonight.
We do.
It's been like so long with the trips and stuff and pre-recording. It's actually been a long time since we chatted. So like, I can dive into this really, really quickly because I'm only going to talk about it for a second, and then we're going to link. But there's a place that I saw called So Splush It's an Etsy shop that sells stickers, and they're adorable. Like, there's like a one that says like full snack developer or snack overflow. One of my favorites is let me find it. Ya Visual Basic.
The taco. I mean, that's all we need to know. Is the taco.
Good. Ya Visual Basic is really good. So is Silence of the Lambdas. Or Do You Even Linux, bro?
Frogo.
Like, they're just adorable stickers, and they have earrings and stuff too, but like just genuinely freaking adorable. And we're going to link them because they're awesome. And I just think they're super cute. And I need to get some for my wife to put on her laptop because she'll appreciate that.
Are you going to get her a React girl living in a React world?
Oh, that one's pretty good. No, I was thinking about the Do You Even Linux, bro? Was my first thought. Like, or VS Code girl or Postgres Spice Latte. Like, that one's pretty good. Yeah, Visual Basic still makes me laugh.
And look, they have a Ouija board too.
Oh, yeah, they do have a Ouija board.
Interesting. I like these.
And they're shiny. We have shiny detection stickers, which we'll probably have at B-Sides Charm.
Yes.
And before B-Sides Charm...
Speaking of which, another side did you get yours?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I like them.
The other logo.
I completely and totally forgot. I will never accept that logo as legit because I don't like the word detections. I like the detective. I don't like the word, the way they did the word. However, next week I will be at B-Sides Nova teaching and speaking about introduction to malware analysis, which should be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to that quite a bit too. B-Sides Nova is a decent show. It's only one day, so like it doesn't take a lot out of me. But a lot of my direct reports from my previous job apparently are going to be there. So like I haven't seen these guys since I left my previous job, so I'm actually really excited that I get to see these guys again.
Nice, that'll be fun.
Plus I get to talk, which is cool, and I know a couple other people who are talking, so like that one's going to be really exciting. Anyway, so back to the news. What do you got?
Well, where to start from? So actually, we'll start with something that happened to me while I was in Mexico. Did you read up on this little Find My Phone notification that was pushed to Samsung devices?
No.
So, what day was it? I forget what day was it. It was the day that I was in Mexico. They all blended together because there was much mezcal. But I woke up and I had a Find My Phone notification that was just the number 1. It was weird. I tapped on it. It did nothing. I'm like, I disabled this service and disabled the app, but it's one of those apps put in by the service provider, so you can't actually uninstall it. You can only disable it. So that was what was one thing that was interesting is a disabled service was still able to receive push notifications. And later, with the link from the register here, is that actually ended up being related to a small data breach that Samsung had.
Yeah, but so we should probably specify data breach, because if this is something, like if I'm reading this appropriately, a couple things. First off, you're very special because it was only like less than 150 customers. But secondly, data breach versus like hacker breach are different in this case, right? Like this was an internal data exposure kind of thing, not like a hacker did some hacker things.
Well, they originally said that it was due to some internal testing. But where was it at this? That it ended up actually being, I'll have to find it again, but it actually ended up being someone not inside the Samsung network did something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did not see that in this article, so that's interesting. Interesting. So I got one for you.
Mm-hmm.
You ready? Headline: This Week in Ring News, because that's definitely become a theme for us. Is the ring.
And with the soundboard that you just picked up, we need to have like a canned This Week in Ring.
Right? This Week in the Ring. So actually, this is not a bad ring story. That's the thing. I mean, it comes from a lot of bad things happening, but it's not a bad ring story. So Ring outlined a new security and data privacy measures following their backlash from the last year. They are now requiring two-factor authentication for all users when they sign into their Ring account. So, like, that's kind of a step in the right direction. Will it solve all of the other horrible, horrible problems with the Ring? Probably not. But
Progress.
They're requiring 2FA. Basically, so to me, like, you know, a company requires 2FA for security. When an external company requires 2FA on the product that you bought, that says a lot about the product kind of sucking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to be too harsh, but like, I don't know any company that's ever forced me to put 2FA on anything. I like 2FA, but it doesn't mean I've ever felt forced to use 2FA. Like the Ring goes, ha, you must use this because we can't get security right.
For your own protection, do this thing.
But that's that. Keep it going.
Speaking of 2FA, I saw something, being a Samsung Android user, about an Android malware that can intercept the Google Authenticator 2FA codes, the swipe and pin on the phone.
Damn.
Now, when I checked this out, it was actually the Cerebus group and their RAT capabilities. Like, their RAT for that group has the ability to intercept the Google Authenticator 2FA and then the pin and the swipe pattern if the RAT's on your phone.
Damn. And you can probably get that from 75% of the apps that you download from the Google Play Store.
Exactly.
That's a little mean, but I'm an iPhone user, so everybody can boo me later.
Oh.
As a side note, we always get a little snarky when we're tired, and I think we're both very, very tired.
Yes,
so
and my
mind,
back is still healing too, so it's starting to itch right now.
Yeah, so bear in mind, snarkiness may exist, and if you hear like shk, 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 don't pay any attention to that. That's peeling, and you don't want to know. Anyway, so here's something that's kind of interesting, right? So Emotet was the first thing we ever talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the way back to episode 1. Recently, it came out that Emotet now hacks nearby Wi-Fi networks to infect new victims. This was Binary Defense, so one of Dave Kennedy's thing.
Mm-hmm.
They discovered an Emotet sample that leverages a Wi-Fi spreader module to scan Wi-Fi networks and then attempts to infect devices. Kind of new functionality. However, the spreader had a timestamp of April 16th, 2018. So like 2 years, indicating that the spreading behavior has been running unnoticed for close to 2 years until it was detected like in January.
Damn.
So they say it marks an escalation of Emotet's capabilities, but I mean, does it? Because
it's 2 years old.
It's 2 years old, and we just now found it, and that's crazy. And props to Binary Defense for finding that. As always, we'll link the article. Like they've got a whole thing about how it actually works, and it's really, really interesting. And it also talks a little bit about like how Emotet has morphed from just a standard banking Trojan to like a loader and Swiss Army knife to basically all this other malware and shit that you can get.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, in all my time in IR and stuff, like of all the commodity that I played with sample wise, it was easily one of the most interesting because like I used to say it is way cooler than a commodity piece of malware. Like it can do some real shit. So back to you.
Well, I found something that you may have some interesting input on related to HackerOne. And there was a Forbes, was it Forbes or where is it? Looking for the link.
Tom's Hardware.
An article about how hackers have more earning potential through the HackerOne bounty program than most IT people.
And they quoted that at like just shy of 90 grand, right?
Yeah, it was like $89,732.
Yeah. So this is an interesting concept. Like it's HackerOne. So like, of course they're promoting HackerOne, and like there's a lot of value that these bug bounty and public bug bounty programs can bring. And there's a lot of value in this concept of like people picking up extra money from it. But like, if you listen to like, Kate Masouras, who started the bug bounty program for like Microsoft, right? And some government agencies, like she talks a lot about how bug bounty needs to change because a lot of what it's doing is basically creating, like bounty hunters, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it is. So yes, you can make a crap ton off bug bounty if you're really, really good at it. Otherwise, you could make nothing and like not be employed at all. Like there's not a lot of room for mediocre in that market. So they say like to date, like 7 people have brought in $1 million.
Yeah. Out of the 40 million that it paid out in 2019, 7 people took $1 million each.
But how many people are using the platform and the program? Like probably quite a bit. And the reason why, like I say, like, you know, we have one of the largest bug bounty programs in the world and we go through HackerOne and they're a great partner. But like 78% of their members are using hacking to help them find better jobs. True. You can learn a lot of stuff. 40% devote 20 hours per week or more. And only 18% do so full time. To be completely honest, like if you could make a living and make more money than you could in the industry as a whole by doing this on your own time and on your own hours and going to these lavish live events and parties that they throw, because they're insane. I've been to a couple of them. They're awesome. And like the swag is on point, right? Like if you could do that, why are only 18% doing it full time? Probably because only 18% can afford to do it full time. And they got to have like a good month or like a good year all the time. So like, I don't know that I would encourage people to drop their career for bounty hunting. However, it is a really cool secondary thing that you can do. And you get to do some really cool, like hacking on other people's platforms. And like today I'm going to hack Verizon Media. Tomorrow I'm going to hack the Air Force. Like some really cool stuff you can do there. Speaking of like working and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to tie this in. This is something that's so genuinely interesting to me. Kickstarter. So workers at Kickstarter voted and have formed the first union in the tech industry.
Ooh, this will be interesting.
It's relatively historic because like there's people at Google like doing walkouts, and Amazon, same thing, like that are trying to organize. And like there's so much to this story. Like I strongly encourage people to read this story because like basically like Kickstarter was firing the people who were trying to do this. And then when somebody went to the press and told them, they're like, okay, we won't fire any more people and we'll let you go as long as you don't talk to anybody externally about it. Like but like in reality, like this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Like we've never had a tech union before. Do we need a tech union? I don't know. Like, I'm not going to say like, yes, we definitely need a union. No, we don't. Like unions have really like super good positives in the sense that like they really protect workers. But they also have negatives in the sense that like they can also protect really bad workers. So this is going to be genuinely historic to see like it's happening at Kickstarter now. Is it going to happen at other places? What's that going to look like? And in 5 years, are we all going to be union employees where what happened to you, Exiled, can never happen again? But it also can't happen to like the guy who sucks who sits next to you.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And this kind of starts to put it on par with other professions like plumbers and electricians and iron workers that have had unions for a really long time. And it'll be interesting to see if they also do a similar thing like we talked about outside of an episode with apprenticeships, like technical apprenticeships, rather than as an alternative to the whole certification, getting college degrees and things like that.
Yeah. I also have to wonder if it's not going to bring even more inflated rates. Like, I'm the last person to like complain about making good money because like we make good money. But like, you have no idea how many people that I talk to, especially like low, like not a lot of experienced people who are like, well, you know, I wouldn't even consider a job for like less than a 6-figure salary. Like that's just like 6 figures is nothing in tech. Mm-hmm. And like that thought process to me is kind of amazing because like 9% of the population makes over $100,000 a year in the US. 9%. So like we have people literally like snubbing their nose at being in the top 10th percentile. That to me is kind of crazy.
It is really crazy.
Right?
And then like comparing how many of these positions that are advertising like this 50, 60K a year, and those same people being like, if I took that job, I wouldn't be able to live.
Yep. But one of the things that gets really interesting, like that we saw that was seen a lot in like manufacturing unions and even like plumbers and stuff is exorbitant costs, right? Like plumbers are billed at like $200 an hour or something like that. Like, because when basically if one person is under the bar, like everybody walks out and effectively shuts the company down. I'm not saying unions are good or bad. I don't know. I've never been part of a union. I've like worked at factories and stuff that had unions, but I'm very interested to know what that will do with already relatively exorbitantly paid workers and whether or not that will like the new standard will become like no one works for less than like 120K or something. I don't know.
And then that, I mean, with the whole union thing, then it gets onto the whole actually maintaining the work-life balance, right? So there's a lot of people in cybersecurity and IT that have to put in a lot of extra work in order just to stay employed and whatnot. And the union would help from keeping that stuff getting abused.
That's the thing. Like, there's benefits and negatives, and it'll be interesting to know which one shines forward if this continues to go through. Like, Kickstarter is not an InfoSec union. It's a union for all of Kickstarter. So it will be interesting to know if this becomes more popularized on the tech side, because there's definitely benefit to it, but there's definitely going to be downsides too. But anyway, what else you got?
Let me see. Let me go back to my list here really quick because it is a bit of a list.
Oh, it's more than a bit of a list.
So it's this one that I'm going to bring up. I definitely need to dig into more to understand this. But with Chrome 80 and doing this whole, what was it, text fragment, this deep linking, and a lot of people are having privacy concerns about this because of the information that it's able to gather from doing this scroll to text fragment aspect of it.
Oh, yeah. You know, the other thing in that article that's really interesting is the bring up of the browser war, like the 2020 browser war. And to me, it's super interesting because, like, I just read an article about it, and it's, to me, like, it's so shitty. Like, companies can be so shitty. So Microsoft just redid Edge, right? And Edge is now based in Chromium. So you can basically run Chrome extensions and all that shit because it's Chromium. So like Microsoft, when they launched the new Edge, were like starting to put in the start bar of Windows, like, try Edge, like, don't use Firefox, use Edge. Or like when you search for Chrome, it's bringing up a big thing on Bing that says use Edge. Well, it's not like Google's any better, because now if you go to like the App Store in Google to get an extension and you're on Edge, it's going, we can't guarantee your safety.
Yep.
You should be using Chrome. Like, browser wars are insane. And like, I don't know. I guess somewhat I fail to see like the superior benefit of like what browser people use, maybe. But like, man, the browser wars are nuts.
The only thing that I could think in the browser wars that have to do with the analytics that are being gathered and advertising based on browser rather than website.
Oh, that's true. Does that happen a lot? I'm curious now. I wonder how much advertising happens based on browser.
Well, I mean, like, since I run with Chrome and Firefox concurrently, there's a lot of websites that on Chrome load fine, and other ones that just from the base Firefox security comes up with please enable advertisements, please let our advertisements through. So
yeah, I tend to I tend to do a lot of, like, Firefox is my daily driver.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, there's a lot of stuff that I have to open Chrome for because Firefox just doesn't work very well.
Yeah, like recording this podcast. Like, we can't use Firefox. So
That's
have to
true.
Use Chrome
We
for
can't
it.
use Firefox to record this podcast. We have to use Chrome.
Right? So there's some evidence of that browser war. But from this article, really quick, I just wanted to say this. The quote that I was looking for from Peter Snyder, who works at, Brave Browser, who's a privacy researcher. His quote was, "Imposing privacy and security leaks to existing sites, many of which will never be updated, really should be a don't break the web, never cross red line. This spec does that." So, yeah, that's what I was saying. Definitely need to see more of the technical stuff on this, but interesting. Another interesting.
It is. It's really interesting. So, let's see. Let's talk about something that's actually kind of frightening. And I don't think this is the first time that this has happened, but this is definitely the first time I've ever read about it. So there's kind of a new ransomware scheme going on. And, like, this might be one of the worst ones I've ever seen. For just like a human reason, right? So this new ransomware thing, they discovered a variant that's not asking for money or Bitcoin or any of that stuff. You get a message that pops up demanding that victims email images of their breasts to a particular address in order to recover files.
What the fuck?
Right? So they say the variant was likely created as a prank, but it doesn't make it any less problematic for those who get hit by it. Like, it's serious. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's a whole nother, like, money is one thing, but, like, exploiting people for, like, private images is crazy to me and, like, a whole new low.
And then that turns around and becomes lifelong blackmail.
Right? In 2017, Kaspersky actually reported a ransomware that did the same thing. So it's not necessarily new, but this is the second time we're seeing it. And it's just... And then again, like, scammers on dating apps have requested nude photos and then held them for ransom by threatening to leak them.
Yeah. And following Badass Army and, like, Kate and Rachel when they talk about the legal stuff on it and how the states, there's, like, no coherent law about it, and some states are really bad about victims of this. Like,
Yep.
It's a pretty big area for people to take advantage of right now, which is horrible.
So here's the upside. MCSoft, the company that kind of released this data, also released a free decryption tool that can decipher the files ensnared by the ransomware, so the victims don't actually have to send anything. So if anybody you know ever gets hit by this, like, know that, like, there's a free tool that you can go fix it. Because that's, like, good. And
that is good.
I'm glad that exists.
Yeah, so speaking of malware, I was reading up on this Mozart variant of malware and how it's using, or maybe going back to using, DNS for doing its command channel.
Okay.
And specifically, this is using the text records in DNS.
And this isn't the first time that's ever happened. It just doesn't happen a lot, right?
I think it, like, goes in waves, because wasn't it like 2014, 2015, maybe 2016? There was, like, a huge wave of malware and everything doing DNS data exfil and doing stuff over DNS. And
there's one problem with you asking this as a question. My memory is not that good. It barely goes back to last week.
Yeah, and that's why I just named off 3 years.
Smart.
Yeah. But the point is waves, right? Like, so it was a big thing for a while. Everyone upped their DNS detection capabilities, and it went away, and they moved on to something else. And this one's kind of bringing it back.
Everything is secular. Mm-hmm. Although I had a thought as you were talking about 3 years. You know how, like, OSCP has, like, that whole motto of try harder?
Mm-hmm.
I think we here at Detections really strive to be much more like dodgeball. Aim low.
Aim low.
I love that movie. Yeah, that's interesting. And that's like a good thing to know about, like seeing that. So here, you ready for another one?
Yeah.
This one is really quite interesting in the sense that like it's not real yet. Oh, I didn't actually. Okay, I marked it that I talked about it, but I didn't. It's not real yet. This is a concept, but a security researcher has discovered a very novel way to steal data from air-gapped computers by manipulating the brightness of a computer monitor.
What?
Yeah. So an academic researcher, Dr. Mordechi Guri of the Cybersecurity Research Center in Negev in Israel. Basically, if you get this malware installed on an air-gapped computer, it can go search for data, and then it can make changes that are very small adjustments to the RGB color components of each pixel so that human eye can't see it. And it basically like encodes information and transmits it using the screen brightness in a sequential pattern, which is kind of like Morse code. And then you just need to point a camera at it, and then you can record it and see the pattern. And then once you receive, you can turn it back into meaningful data. So like not super real yet, but super interesting. And I thought that was definitely worth mentioning because it's super interesting.
Yeah, that's like a number of years ago when I was reading an academic article about someone who did data exfil on an air-gap network using the internal sensors to pick up the heat changes on a connect on a. So it was super slow, but they were able to do data exfiltration from an air-gap computer to one connected to the internet just by messing with the heat output.
Right. So what else you got?
Now, I'm trying to figure out where we can go. I think I'm going to save the really fun news article for last. And let's jump into a couple of more like heavy technical ones.
Okay.
We'll do the crook crack vulnerability. Like it's a CVE from late last year about WPA2 being able to do, what was it? Trying to remember. I'm trying to see what it was able to do. It's just cracking it, right? So just breaking through the encryption of the protocol, but it was only specific implementations.
Okay.
So it was WPA2 Personal Enterprise with the AES C Charlie Charlie Mike Papa encryption. So there was something to do with the implementation that allowed them to crack and break through that encryption. So definitely look into that. And because I know the WPA2 Enterprise, I'm trying to think how many times I've encountered the CCNP in the workplace. But that's something maybe to check into and see the threat profile for where you work.
Okay. So you're going to go technical and I'm going to go human.
Yeah.
Ready? So there's a individual from Dead Pixel who I got to meet and hang out with at ShmooCon, and he wrote a blog series. His name's Rob, and we'll link this, but he wrote a blog series called IR from a Different Perspective. And, you know, it's not super technical, but like it's a really good read. And I wanted to give it a shout out because it's a really good read. It's basically him talking about like going on a case and kind of like having to social engineer his way in because like the technical people don't trust the external consultant, and like how he kind of gets in and works and like the emotions that happen there and like the people side. And I'm reading this thing and I'm just kind of like nodding my head and I'm kind of smiling and I'm like, yep, been there. Yeah. Oh yeah, I get that. And like, to me, I just really enjoyed the read because it took me back to doing that kind of work. Mm-hmm. And too often we don't actually talk about the human perspective of things. So like, it was really, really cool to see somebody like publish something that specifically talked about the human side of things in an approachable way and in a way that like, just in general, like I really both enjoyed and like it was well thought out. So everybody should check that out and it'll be linked.
Yeah, it is a good read. I've been pretty impressed with that, and a lot of the other people from Dead Pixel Sec that have been starting up blogs.
Agreed.
It's been some really good information that they're starting to pull out.
It's really nice to see people like getting out there, man. Like, we encourage all of you to like do this stuff and like we're not special. Do this.
Definitely not special.
Talk, write, doesn't matter. I can't write. I can talk. So like I talk, but like write. If you like to write, tweet. I don't care. Just get out there. Share what you know because you know stuff.
And it will end up helping someone at some point.
Exactly. And like, that's all that matters. Help one person. You're good.
So back onto the technical stuff. I don't know if you read this article, but this Jackson VD put up a blog post about that he called leveling up a Windows Defender. Now I bring this up because in talking with like endpoint detection and protection, a lot of people have been talking about how Windows Defender has really upped its game recently.
They have, and we may or may not have mentioned that here, but they have.
Yes. And I've been seeing that too. So this guy's blog post actually goes through some pretty step-by-step technical breakdowns on how to make that even better.
Nice. I still wouldn't necessarily call it on par with like an EDR solution, but they have really leveled up. Yeah. So another good blog post to read.
I definitely wanted to share this because there's a lot of really good information, like how to go in and configure it to do really well.
For sure. So question for you. Do you use a VPN service?
I do use a VPN.
Which one do you use?
Private internet access.
Oh, I used private internet access for a long time. Then I switched to Nord. Then they had a breach, and I still use Nord. It's okay. I was somebody in the room say Proton Mail. Proton Mail. Hey, there it is. I heard it. I heard somebody at home say it. So we're gonna go with it. Forget that they haven't actually heard this yet, but I'm gonna pretend that somebody said it. So hackers have used fake Proton VPN installers to infect users with malware. And steal passwords. So like if you use Proton Mail, if you're that person that I heard specifically say you use Proton Mail, because I heard it, they're basically imitating legitimate websites, you know, normal, like fishy kind of thing. Clone the design of their official website, and then they're dropping malware through their corrupted installer file. So like be prepared for that because it's Azerot, which is a rat. It was targeting a whole bunch of stuff and spreads like PayPal themed banking malware. Bunch of stuff going on there. But like if you're a Proton user, be careful what you click.
And that's kind of goes back to one of the growing trends, right? That goes back to that whole supply chain attack.
Right? So, you know a really, really cool way to stop yourself from most of the spoofed website stuff and protect yourself from most of the spoofed website stuff?
Go outside?
No. It's a real piece of advice. Use a password manager. Like, everybody thinks about password managers in the sense that, like, password managers are there so that we can manage our passwords, but they do way more than that. Like, if you really cut down to it, because if you put in the website that it's supposed to be in the credentials for that site, right? They pretty much straight up, like, they will only show the credentials if it's the actual site. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you know PayPal's PayPal and you get sent a spoofed PayPal, it won't fill in your credentials. If it doesn't fill in your credentials, and it should, it's probably a spoofed site, and it's worth looking at. Or maybe your password manager's broken. But just bear with me in this thought process.
Either way, it's a giant red flag that something's not right and means you should inspect it closer.
Correct. All right. Next topic.
So I'm getting close to the end of my list here.
Me too.
So cool. I've got 2 more to go. So I ran across this article today about Dropbox doing a reverse migration out of AWS. Now I found this interesting because I still hear a lot of companies going, we're going to move to the cloud for more flexibility, buying into the whole, we're not managing our own infrastructure, so we can just focus on development, focus on the business itself. But that's the reason why Dropbox is reverse migrating out of it, that they were finding that the AWS isn't the quoted infinite scalability, just isn't actually meeting their business needs. So then they completely stood up and built their own internal data center that I think they called Magical Pocket. to
That's
do
not a bad
all of their
name.
cloud hosting for file hosting.
The only better name would have been Bag of Holding.
They might run into some trademark and IP issues with that, though.
It's possible, but I think a lot of people like it. Like, ThinkGeek used that name and a bunch of people.
But yeah, I find this interesting because it's the question is like, is this a one-off business case, or is this like that pathfinding pioneer of businesses who are going to be going back to managing their own data centers that have the bigger needs that an environment like Google Cloud or AWS won't actually be able to meet up with the scalability needs?
Sure. I mean, plus it costs too, right? Like
Yep.
when your whole company is storing other people's data, you've got to kind of figure the cost angle of that. Also, there are days that I really wish this was video, because like I just saw a GIF. Yes, GIF, hard G. Peanut butter proved it. But somebody said what securing computers and networks feels like, and it's a guy shoveling a bunch of snow, and he gets all the snow off of his porch, and then he sets the shovel down, and then all the snow falls off of his roof right back onto his porch. And I'm like, damn, yes. I want to show that because it's perfect.
Yes.
So anyway, I got one more, you got one more.
Yes.
Which is perfect. We actually, like, for not planning this, like, we lined it up really well. So from a Blue Team perspective, and this is kind of a big thing, like, there's an open source SIM rule set called Sigma rules, that's made by a whole bunch of people.
Yep.
I have never used it. I am very much like a custom rule for the kind of place type person. However, it can be a really good starting point to use something like this. And this is a really like regularly updated kind of thing. Well, now it can be converted into Elastic Security SIM detection rules. Because a whole bunch of people did a whole bunch of work and have now built this signature format for SIM systems to run in Elasticsearch. So that's super cool. And we'll share the GitHub of that as well.
That I'll probably end up putting to use, because one of the things that I was doing with my free time now to try and get some side money till I can get another job is using the SOC Prime marketplace to start writing detections in Sigma, and now I can do some easy port over once I write it once.
Yep, because they basically built this up for that, and like SOC Prime being one of the ones who worked on it, right? Which is just awesome, and like this is really cool and worth checking out, and cool Blue Team news, and that's why I saved it till last, even though I don't use it. It's cool.
It is cool.
What's your last?
my last one. Some people may hate this. Some people may love it. It's not related to the industry at all, but it's a reason why people continue to love Dunkin' Donuts, because now you can just go buy bacon for a snack from Dunkin' Donuts.
I feel like that's the perfect thing. Looking at the pictures, it looks beautifully seasoned.
Yes, it's their whole like cherry wood smoked with pepper and stuff like that on it. Like it's the same bacon they use on some of their sandwiches, but now you can just get the bacon in a package for a snack.
So now we need to say we talk about hills and bacon. I really want to just write like a show description at some point that's very a la like old school Top Gear. Tonight on Detections, Sean talks about hills. Exiled talks about bacon.
We should do that for this one afterwards.
We totally should.
Yeah.
So I believe that brings us into our topic. And our topic comes with a little bit of personal news from me, too. No, I don't want to update applications right now. That could break things. So we want to talk about home network setup. Because some of us, me, are like gluttons for punishment and just run way too much. But like, it's a really cool thing. And especially like if you're somebody who's trying to break into the industry, there's really cool, like free or almost free services that you can run to like play with this stuff at home and like really play with like network defense stuff. Right. But this comes from a story. So like a friend of mine, that I used to do like an old broadcasting thing with hit me up and he goes, dude, like this is a thing, and it's this thing called the Unify Dreambox Pro. For anybody who knows anything about me and like my love of Ubiquity gear, my whole like network stack at this point is all Ubiquity, like small to medium sized business gear, because I don't know why, I just like it. My boss actually looked at me and goes, "You're nuts." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I want 10 gigabits of 10 gig throughput to maximize my 1 gig speed." But this Dreambox is really cool. So I used to have an AP Pro, or the Unified Security Gateway Pro. It was a 1U rack mountable thing, but it was loud, like super loud. And the hardware in it only let the IDS and IPS and like threat prevention stuff run on a network at 300 megasec. This Dreambox is like under $400. It can do 3.5 gig speed, full 10 gig speed, 3.5 gig with everything turned on. So like all the threat detection stuff, like honeypot and IDS and all that stuff. It also has a data import for cameras. So like you can slap in a hard drive and run their camera system. And it has an 8-port switch. And
nice.
It's a 1U little rack mounted thing that is way, way quieter than my other one. So like I actually just rack mounted it and got it built last night. And like it's super, super nice so far. And it's Ubiquity. So like they have bugs sometimes. And a couple people have been like, there are problems. The only one that I'm seeing is it keeps telling me that there's a Vizio TV connected directly to my Unify, which is not true. Like to the Dream Machine, which is not true. Cause like it's not. But anyway, so like that brings into a really good kind of topic and segue into, as much as I love this thing, like my Ubiquity setup, it has some cost associated with it. I think it's worth it because I love literally being able to control my entire network from my phone or my computer. And if you want a really badass network setup, like I strongly suggest you look at Unify stuff and Ubiquity stuff. But there's a lot of other really cool stuff that you can do for way cheaper, right? So like, what's the cheapest thing you can do? I mean, what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts here? Like, what would you put in your network?
So, I'm laughing because I've done a couple of different things coming up from the whole like being homeless and jobless and trying to figure out how to learn and stuff like that. So of course you got to try to like maximize what you can get for your money. And sometimes just putting out the money for a decent desktop system and virtualizing everything on that is a much cheaper starting point than building out an entire network until you can get the money to do that. Or something else that I did as part of a way to force myself to start to learn this whole AWS cloud migration is also to use the automation that's built into like Google Cloud, Azure, and AWS, pre-build a bunch of AMIs or Amazon machine images, and then you build the automation to stand up and tear down a lab and only have it functional for the duration that you need it, instead of letting it sit idle in a rack. And
that way you're not paying for it.
And paying for like the energy and stuff like that just to have it sit there.
Yeah, cloud still mystifies me because it's just somebody else's computer.
Yes, it is somebody else's computer, but if you're trying to min-max your funding, it's something that you can definitely leverage and still get good capabilities to do the same thing without putting out all the money to build it and run it inside your place.
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell you like the cheapest and most useful project that I've ever picked up for my network. You ready for this? It's free other than the cost of a Raspberry Pi. And to be honest, you don't really need a Raspberry Pi. You can do this all virtually, but like Raspberry Pi makes sense because it's literally in the name. The Pi hole. Are you familiar with the Pi hole?
I've heard you talk about it, but I haven't looked into it yet.
Dude, the Pi hole is one of my favorite things. It is a Raspberry Pi, and I just built a new one last night because I wanted to beta test 5, and like so I stuck it on my Raspberry Pi 3 or Raspberry Pi 4, whatever the new Pi is. It is a DNS-based ad blocker that basically imports hundreds of thousands of DNS lists and then blocks them. So there's cool benefit to that, right? So like you can run an ad blocker on your computer and that's great, but then you go to like your smart TV and you watch YouTube, you're going to get ads.
Yeah.
And YouTube, some ads are going to sneak through anyway because like they're really sneaky with that shit. But like I don't get ads on my smartphone really anymore. I don't get ads like in most other devices in my house. Like it's not just my computer running an ad blocker. So for what, $40, you just point all your DNS to the Pi hole, and then Pi hole routes your DNS through something else, and it does static list DNS blocking for ad domains.
That's cool.
It's super dope. And I mean, it's a $45 project that you can set up really quick. And it'll tell you like what your top domains are, what your top blocked are. Like you can manage your lists. You can do a whole bunch of different stuff. It also will do like Zeus Tracker and some of the malware stuff too, and it'll block that. So there's some really cool stuff that you can do there really, really cheap. And then you move into like everybody's favorite toy, which is pfSense, which to be honest, I don't get it personally.
I don't get it either. Like maybe because I haven't tried using it in a while, but it was one of those ones that I felt was when it had issues, it was needlessly complicated to try to figure it out for someone who may still be trying to learn things. And for me, when I'm going to set up like a local lab, sometimes I just want to be lazy and use something that doesn't take as much work to make it work.
And that's why I use Ubiquity stuff. But the other thing is like firewalls are great. I love firewalls. They're awesome. And pfSense is a good free open source firewall. However, for like $50 a year or free, depending, you can go get a UTM, which is like a unified threat management console. I think long before I bought into the Unify stuff, I think I spent like $300 on a small fanless computer that had 2 NICs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I built an Untangle. And Untangle is super freaking cool. Untangle is what's called a UTM. So like it's got a whole bunch of different applications that can run. So you can run the firewall. You can run quality of service. So like, different stuff. You can run an IDS. You can run VPNs. You can run all this stuff on this one network device. And you could do it inside of a $300 fanless computer. So like I ran that for years. I ran the Untangle. You could also do like, it had a application web proxy built into it. So I could do like web application proxy filtering and like block porn or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do all that stuff and you can do it at a host level. So like say like this IP address, if I wanted to give my kid like a static host, I'd be like block porn for like this IP. So like, and Untangle was $50 a year for the home version. And then like, Sophos has a UTM that's free for the home version, which is super awesome. So like you get all these options and like it gets really cool. Like labs are awesome. And like we talk about labs a lot, but occasionally having real visibility into your own network, especially when you're doing like lab exercises and stuff like running malware and shit, it becomes really useful to like see what that looks like going into and out of your network at that level.
Yep.
Right. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Moloch here. Like you can build your own full packet capture system and stick Moloch on your network because it's free. And then the other big one, Security Onion, like completely free, awesome distro, Kibana, Suricata, Bro, like all the base stuff. Like you can build this full monitoring box out of a computer that you have laying around and just pipe network traffic through it and like see what happens.
Yep. And on that note too, we definitely don't want to forget mentioning Detection Lab.
Yes.
We can put the link on there too for those that don't know about it because it does a Vagrant automated install of Splunk with the free license, Windows Server 2016, Windows 10, and a logging server. So it will have those set up so that when you do things on it, it will automatically log, and then you can use the Splunk, the free Splunk, to do actual queries and set up detections and stuff like that too.
Nice. Yeah, like there are so many really cool options outside of just like the lab, like Remnux malware, Kali Linux stuff to like build network appliances for your home on old hardware and like experience like that level of visibility in your network, or then like pivot from your lab. Like one of the first things I did when I set up this Dream machine was I busted out my malware box and I'm like, I'm going to run some malware and see what happens. And then I'm going to go look at it on the network side.
I think the important thing too with this, with again, min-maxing the money is build the lab based on the purposes, right? So if you want to do malware analysis, reverse engineering, you're going to need a different kind of setup than if you want to write detections or parsers for things like Elastic or Curator or things like that. So definitely scope out what you want your lab to do.
Never underestimate the power of a Raspberry Pi, because Pies today can run like bro in Suricata. Like, you can run an IDS on a fucking Raspberry Pi now, if your network is relatively small, which, I mean, most of our networks are relatively small. I think I cap out at like 30 endpoints. Like, you can run an IDS on a Raspberry Pi, and that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, for someone single like me with a cat, I'm at most have 3 devices on my network at a time.
Oh, if I was single, I would still have 25 devices on my network.
But you're not also trying to learn photography as a side hobby.
That's true. I did that for a little while. I just have a lot of devices. Like, I have, my VR headset. I have my Switch. I have 6 computers. I just have a lot of crap.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, there's the point that we're trying to get across, as much as, like, I just kind of wanted to talk about my Unify stuff a little bit. But more than that, like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do, like, on the cheap to build, like, your own home network. And it can do a lot of cool stuff, and you can get a lot of benefit from it, and being able to look at things at that level. Like, there's a lot to be said for looking at, like, the host, right? Understanding what's happening on the host. There's a whole lot to be said for understanding what's happening on the network as well. And for, anywhere from 50 to $500, like, you can build a serious or, like, adequate monitoring system on your network.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't take much. Now, we're starting to run a little long here, and I think before we move on to our announcement, we should just say our detection right quick.
We should. Go ahead.
So we're going to play off the DNS and talk about detecting, like, the malware who is using the text records, looking for the anomalous stuff in, like, that, like, extra information in the data aspect of the DNS outgoing text record. Like, normally the body is going to be non-existent or super small data on the outbound. If it's bigger than normal, definitely check it out. Or frequency, like with DNS exfiltration or tunneling over DNS, you will typically see a lot of requests in a very short time frame.
And boom. So then I believe that brings us to a close.
Yes. Did we want to do the announcement, or do we want to keep people hanging?
I'm going to do the announcement. That's going to happen. Build anticipation. So first off, I want to thank you all, as we always do, for listening, because y'all are awesome. The support has been fantastic. Next week, join me, because Exiled was too drunk, as I interview one of my personal favorite people in the industry, and somebody who has probably done just so much for, like, SOC and, like, investigation stuff. I will be joined,
and the world. Like, he's done some pretty cool stuff for the nation too.
I agree, especially, like, in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, all those hills we talked about, like, it's relevant.
Those rural hill areas.
Yeah. So you can join us, well, you can join me next week as we talk to Chris Sanders about all things investigation and rural tech fund. Timey wimey. It's already been recorded. It was a really, really fun conversation. I was super stoked that we got a chance to talk to him, and then he agreed to come chat with us, because some of his investigation, or some of his research into, like, the psychology of investigations and, like, how people work was just so cool. Plus, like, he had a killer detection. So, like, be prepared for that too. Like, he brought a detection. I didn't even know what it was, but, like, he brought it, and it was killer.
So this is going to be the first episode I'm going to listen to as the producer.
There you go. All right. Thanks, everybody. As always, go forth and find badness.